Oh. I got this music now. Yeah, basically the first real trick in this level. Oops. Yeah, the first real trick here is this part here. So the damage boost is pretty self-explanatory to get through the thwomp. So you need to be going pretty quickly. And you regain flight because you still have takeoff meter active from when you jumped off of that, this block right here. So I could do, like, that, basically. And just, so the 80 frames persists, like, that timer persists even though I damage boosted in the middle of it. And the pause is required, or not required, but effectively required if you're playing RTA. Because what it does is it allows you to re-grab run without spinning. Because if I were to spin, that time it worked. That time it worked. Game's making me look like a fool. There. Didn't work. It only works half the time. 5 out of 6 so far, so... that time it didn't. But yeah, because it with unpatched turnaround, this depends pretty heavily on your facing direction. And there's a way you can get around it. You could basically do those inputs if you had patched turnaround. This isn't. So instead, you have to rely on... also, the direction that you'll face afterwards is also random. So you basically cannot spin. So re-grabbing Y allows you to start flying again, but pausing prevents you from spinning. And the other thing that you need to know, basically, is that the flight state that the game puts you in depends on your falling speed. Or if you're moving up, just your Y speed, basically. So you can see if I were to have a very low Y speed, like that, never mind, that's too high, like that, I only get a normal pump. But if I have a better fall speed, I get a big air catch. And if I do a big air catch into a ceiling, that's a sticky fly, because I have a stored dive. And doing the using up that stored dive into the ceiling is what starts the sticky fly. And one helpful way that I got from Celicry, to tell if you have a stored dive or not, is the palette flashing on Mario's cape. So if I have a dive stored, Mario's cape will flash, and then he can use up the stored dive at any time later to get a big air catch, or start a sticky fly. So Celicry uses that in Data Burst, and he helped me code it for this, too. So, you can see I'll also be flashing while I'm sticky flying, because I still have that stored dive. So that helps here, because let's say you do something like this. You can see I had the sticky fly, but I wasn't flashing. I didn't have a stored dive still. So, even if I managed to get through the thwomp, I wouldn't have been able to get a dive bomb onto the number platform, because you need to quick dive onto that platform, because it's only a 2-tile gap. So you basically need to start diving instantly, which you can only do if you have a stored dive, because when you have a stored dive, the game will let you progress through the cape phases much faster than normal. And confusingly, I remember in Mario Maker they used to call that dive storage, but... well, no, I guess it means basically the same thing in SMW. So you can see I have the dive stored here, but if I were to... if I pause, basically, to re-grab Y too early... oh no, that would have been fine. Like that. Oh, I didn't hit the hidden blocks. Nope. Okay, well those are all fine, but the idea is I wouldn't be able to get a dive in such a short space there. If I'm not flashing. So this trick ends up being a combination of a lot of different things that you kind of have to manage at the same time. For one is your speed, because you have barely enough iframes to get through this swamp. So you need to be moving really quickly. But another thing you have to keep in mind is you can't run off the munchers while holding run, or that happens. You start flying immediately, so you won't be able to get a stored dive in time, because you would basically have to like build up the full dive from nothing, and then pull up into the ceiling, which you can't do unless you're a TAS in that much space. So you actually have to be letting go of run when you go off of that ledge, so that you can delay when you start flying to when you do the pause buffered Y input. So because of that, you want to neutral the D-pad here, because you'll slow down if you're holding run without holding forward. So basically, I want to speed up as much as I can before I hit the munchers, and then let go of Y and neutral the D-pad, so I'm holding nothing until I pause. And only when I pause do I re-grab left for the sticky fly. So that way I keep the speed that I had right here before I hit those munchers. And because of that reason, you also want to hit the munchers on the right side so that you lose as little speed as possible before you're airborne again. I start selected. So that's what you need to do to get through the muncher before your iframes run out. And then you can quick dive onto the platform to hit the switch. And then do the next trick. The next trick is pretty self-explanatory. You just drop the key. Well, it's not as simple as it seems. So you do drop the key, and then grab Yoshi so that you can run on the key. But an important thing to note, and like this is Sprite Water slowing down the key, but it can still be moving too slow or too fast. You need the flight speed, basically, to drop the key so that it moves fast enough that you can get P-speed on it. Is the flying question block you're getting P-speed off of stack pair them? Yeah, it is stacked. I forgot to mention that. It's not like two, it's like a handful because the speed that they give Mario is additive and that sprite moves very slowly. So you need like 4 or 5 for them to actually outspeed Mario cumulatively. But yeah, that's the idea. But yeah, you need the flight speed when you drop the key so that the key is moving fast enough that it'll match your run speed, basically. Which means that after you dive bomb onto the number platform, you then have to neutral jump. Like, you can't be holding left or right when you jump, or you'll slow down too much and the key won't be moving fast enough. That's also not entirely obvious, but also not that hard to deal with once you're aware of it. The duck also helps because it slows you down just a tiny bit to make it easier to keep up with the key, because if you drop it at max speed with really good speed oscillation, you're not going to be able to keep up with it. So just a quick little duck and then jump relatively fast, and it should basically just line up on its own. The next thing is basically the same as the first trick, but a bit easier, just to like... This is half, like, kind of like a break after that first trick, but half also kind of more of the same, because it's like another cool application, at least to me. Here, instead of going into a sticky fly, you use that stored dive, because I kicked the Yoshi, and now I have fast fall speed, so when I re-grab run to start flying, I'm going to instantly use up my stored dive. I'm going to get a stored dive and then instantly use it up as long as I'm neutral on the D-pad and moving forward, which will shoot me up. And then I catch the Yoshi on the way back, and that's a Sprite Solid block, which I give up drawing graphics for Sprite Solid block or Mario Solid block, so that's what you're getting. So it's basically just, it's simple. You just kind of like kick it at the right time to get Yoshi in there, and then you just pause and re-grab run, and that's it. And, you have to be careful here, because you can see Mario is flashing, and that's because if you pause too close to the wall, you actually activate, like, a wall-assisted air catch. And you don't want that, because that boosts you up when you reactivate it by pressing forward, and that will kill you. So if you die like that, it is entirely because you you paused basically too close to the wall. So that should be fine. This would not be fine. Because you basically... What's happening here is that you would be using up your stored dive immediately as soon as you get it, but something you have to keep in mind is that it doesn't get used up immediately. The game doesn't use it up until it already gives you some upward momentum, and using up a stored dive requires, and this will be important later, requires you to have positive speed. You can't have 0 speed and you can't be moving backwards. So... if I can get it again. There. Yeah. With a little more height, preferably. That should be... nope. Yeah, there. So, because Mario flew into a wall, that cancels his speed. Hi, TJB. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, because he flew into a wall, that cancels his speed, so he can't use up his stored dive anymore. So the game lets you keep it, even though it already gave you the height that you would have gotten from using it up. And that's bad here, because that'll launch you into the ceiling when you do end up activating it. So... but yeah, the game only uses it up once it gets through a certain point of the, like, big air catch animation. And hitting that wall basically interrupts it before it reaches that point of the animation, but not before it gives you height. And the amount of height you get depends on when in the animation you canceled your X speed. So, if I were to pull up right, or like if I paused right before the wall, I would get basically no height out of it. But if I pulled up a bit further back, I would get a lot of height like I did here. And this will be important later on at the very end. But for now, let's just grow up Yoshi. And this is just basic tongueless. Just have to beat the shell there. And then just kind of juggle yourself around a bit. Don't despawn the shell. If you go too fast, you'll despawn it, and then you'll die. So you just have to be careful. And this part's also pretty self-explanatory. Those are 1 F-Zeros down there to catch Yoshi at just the right spot for you. Very nice and assisted. It's very kind. The last one, spin the mushroom. Don't touch it. It's straightforward. Then this one's a little tricky, at least trickier than it looks. There's nothing, like, tech-wise, like, super impressive going on here. The main thing to keep in mind is that if you just hold forward... okay, sometimes it works, but if you just hold forward like that, you might not get a dive at the right time. You might go... How do I word this? I'm neutral here, and then I hold forward, and that lets you build up a dive very quickly if you start holding forward after you already start descending from your previous pump. So, like, this is the peak, and then I start holding forward right after to get a dive in a very small amount of space. And sometimes it lines up, so that's fine if you don't do that and you just hold forward the entire time. I guess this save state is, like, set up that way. And obviously, if you dive bomb too late, it hits the sprite killer. If you dive bomb too early, then nothing happens because the shell hasn't hit the ground yet, so it can't get hit upwards. And also, shoutouts to TJB for the idea to have those on-off switches only get hit from the bottom. So, I like the graphics to convey that, basically. So that it can bounce around in the little column before it gets knocked up when you slam the ground. Yeah, that was too early. It didn't hit the blocks because I dive bombed before the shell touched the ground. That's basically what I want to show. Also, if you hit the ceiling right here, I didn't hit it there, like that. Oh, nope, that still wasn't hitting the ceiling. That can mess you up, too. I'm consistently not hitting the ceiling. There, yeah, like that. So just be careful that you don't do that, because that can also make you start dive bombing sooner than you would expect, and you would probably be too early. And then obviously, don't do it too late, because then you won't get the dive bomb at all. Yeah, that part's pretty straightforward, and now we get into the second half of the level, which is the fun part, because now there's Invisible Yoshi. So when you grow up a second Yoshi by dropping the mushroom with Select, it's because that Yoshi is in a higher sprite slot than the one you're riding, it gets processed first. So the one you're riding turns invisible, because there can only be one Yoshi at a time, because they have a lot of overlapping, like, memory addresses that they use for their properties that's, like, shared between every Yoshi. So, for example, like, the graphics that are being DMA transferred in for each, like, frame of Yoshi's animations are shared between every Yoshi on screen, because he has a lot of frames of animation. They wouldn't be able to fit all of those in at the same time, so the game dynamically loads in the correct frame into a given spot that every Yoshi on screen is going to draw from. So it would have multiple Yoshis all with the exact same animation frames, so I guess one of them turns invisible either as like a failsafe or just weird SMW bullshit. But a lot of other weird SMW bullshit with how Yoshi works is when your Yoshi turns invisible, if you tongue at a specific time, if I can not miss it, there we go. So what's happening there is I'm basically remotely activating the other Yoshi's tongue by pressing X right as he grows up. It takes some getting used to learn the timing, but it's a fairly generous window. I don't know the exact frame count for it, but like, that time I missed. But it's fairly easy to do once you get the hang of it. And then since you remotely activate his tongue, he eats that otherwise inaccessible fire flower and it goes in your item box. Also, this is funny. The way he kind of just like, you're riding nothing. And you also, the other thing to note is when you're riding Invisible Yoshi, when you mount him, or when you start riding him, the game isn't tracking the Y position anymore of where you got onto him. So it'll always be the last Y position. Sorry, instead of regularly updating the Y position of where Mario is on Yoshi that it then uses later for the height it should place you at when you dismount him, the game stops updating it because Yoshi is no longer being rendered. So the game basically puts you at a Y position when you dismount Invisible Yoshi that it's no longer tracking. So wherever you mounted Invisible Yoshi, the game will then reuse that Y position later when it's time to dismount him. So I get my Fire Flower, which I'm going to need for later. But also, this gives me Invisible Yoshi, so I need to grow the other Yoshi so I can get Invisible Yoshi. And getting the Fire Flower basically lets me get another one, grow up another Yoshi later. If I can just, there we go. I ditch Yoshi there, and then switch back immediately with Select to get my feather back, because I need to get my feather back before the 80 frame timer runs out, so I can start flying again. And I mean, like, oh my gosh, can I please turn around? I mean the 80 frames from, come on. Okay. I mean the 80 frames from when I take off here. So I do that whole setup, where I take off, drop the power-up, ditch Invisible Yoshi, get my Fire Flower, and switch back to Feather. All of that is within 80 frames. So right there is when the 80 frames would end. And since I have Cape again, and I'm in the air and holding run at this point, I start flying again. Otherwise, I would not start flying again. Although, maybe I should probably actually put something that'll prevent you from landing back here then, because then I could just do this, and Invisible Yoshi will be in the right spot, and I can... Yeah, okay, I need to fix that. Cool. Glad I caught that. But yeah, so when I ditch Invisible Yoshi, he slides along this 1F0 here, and you can hear the sound effect. I mount him right here. You can even see Mario pauses a little. And this ceiling thing here is just to help you line it up. So that gives Invisible Yoshi time to make it to the end of the 1F0. And you're basically lined up to mount him immediately. And from there you use up your stored dive that you have from before you landed on him to start sticky flying instantly. And you can tell it's still stored because the cape is flashing. And I would normally speed up here, but basically this second Yoshi is where you want to drop your Fire Flower to feed him. So I drop my Fire Flower right here. And you can see it's literally, like, timed perfectly. So that when he grows up and the game pauses is right when you need to switch to holding back. Oh, what's up, Earthmelon? Thank you. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, so you need to let go of the D-pad, obviously, to drop select, at least with most controllers. So when I let go of the D-pad to grow Yoshi, I then immediately re-grab it so I can drop down to the lower set of blocks to continue to sticky fly. And then when the game pauses... Oops, he didn't eat it. I missed. What the fuck is going on out there? Anyways, when the game pauses, it's like right at the perfect time that you need to prepare for those inputs, so it gives you kind of a 1-second breather. Yo, nice, thank you, and thank you. So, the pause timing is pretty deliberate to make you, like, able to, like, prepare yourself for the inputs there. So, this part's a little mean, I'll admit. Because those are death blocks at the bottom of the screen right there. That you're about to sticky fly onto. But I should explain the teleport first. So notably, here, this is where I mount Invisible Yoshi. So this is the last time my Y position for where the game should dismount me is updated. So if I were to then, at any point after this, press A, it teleports me up to that height. Because the game thinks that is the height I should be at, it should place me at, when I ditch Yoshi. What the fuck are they doing? So if I'm down here, it'll teleport me up there. But if I'm slightly to the right of there, it teleports me right into the ceiling above me. And that's what I'm aiming for here. So I basically need to press A right there, as I'm underneath these death blocks. So you do need to briefly drop left so that you dip down under the death blocks, and then press A before you hit the kill plane. And then re-grab left so you can now resume sticky flying on the ceiling you teleport to. Because, you know, similar to how you drop down here, or how you can briefly let go of the button like that, and still regain sticky fly as long as you're close enough to the ceiling when you re-grab left. I am basically dipping down underneath the death blocks, and then re-grabbing left there. So that I don't touch the death blocks before the teleport, and then start sticky flying after the teleport, or resume sticky flying after the teleport. And you want to speed up, basically, just to make the timing easier, because you need to dip down under the blocks. And you have a very limited time to teleport with A before you would hit the kill plane. So you want to be moving quickly so that it takes very little time for you to be like at the spot you want to teleport once you start letting go of left, basically. Because obviously if you do it too early, you end up stuck in a wall. Do it too late, you hit a death block or the kill plane. Or you don't get sticky fly back if you do it really late. So that's why you want to speed up to make the timing a little easier. Like that. And then obviously you need the sticky fly so that you can get this quick dive here because it's a 2-tile space and you need to get a dive bomb in that space, which is why you still need your dive stored this whole time. There's no way to get a dive bomb in this space here. And these clouds kind of ensure that. And this next part is probably my favorite, and it's over so quickly you don't even realize what's happening. Which is a shame, because like visually it doesn't look like anything super interesting happened, but it's so cool. If I can get back there, please. Thank you. But yeah, so every component here is necessary, even the slope, for this to work. So this uses a neat little trick that I learned from Data Burst, Celicree's level for KLDC, where I mentioned earlier that if you have a stored dive, you can only use it up for an air catch if you're moving forward. You need positive speed for it to work. And you need to be moving up when you're holding forward. You hold forward to activate it, in this case. So, but an interesting thing is that if you have a full dive stored already, and let's say you're playing with patch turnaround, so you press X to spin, you're now moving backwards. You're still like moving in the same direction you were before, but because you did a spin to turn around and now you're facing the other way, you no longer have positive speed. So if you then got a bounce off of, say, this Koopa, I can show it off real quick. Oops. So if I get a full dive bomb and bounce off of this Koopa right here, that uses up my stored dive. I don't get it back, basically. Except there I actually would have because of the way it lined up, but that's like a weird cape state thing that you don't need to worry about. Yo, have fun, Myth. See you later. So, if I were to get a bounce off of him, it would use up my stored dive, and I don't want that. I want to keep it. But if I'm facing backwards, you didn't have full dive, so it wouldn't have worked. Yeah, it's like I had almost completely full dive, but not quite. Oh, but you're saying that I don't actually get my dive state back, is what you mean? What if I don't hit those blocks there? Hold on. Yeah, I used it up, so I don't get it back. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So, because I'm facing backwards, when I hit this guy and bounce off of him, it'll give me the height from the bounce, but it won't use up my stored dive. And one way you can do this is basically, you know, just like dive bomb and then turn around with a spin, but this is unpatched, so that won't work. So if my goal here that I want, and I'll explain why in a second, but I want to get a bounce off of him with a dive stored without using it up. So that way I can get a bounce up into this ceiling with my dive still stored, basically. Oops. And one way I can do that is using this slope. Because, oops, if I were to... Let me make another save state here. If I do a butt slide off of this slope with takeoff meter active, I can then press a button. You can't start flying, even if takeoff meter is active while you're in butt slide state. But you can break out of butt slide state at any time by pressing left or right. And you can see there I start flying as soon as I tap a direction, and I'll be flying in whatever direction I tap. So if I tap right, I face right, tap left, I face left. So this works really well here, because once I've built up enough fall speed to get a dive stored in that very small space, I could then tap left to start flying with a full dive already built up, and I have a dive stored. And because I tap left to face left, I am now moving backwards. So that meets all of those conditions, basically. I now get a bounce off of him with my dive still stored. I get upward momentum without using it up, because I was facing backwards. And there's one other component to this where you want to press jump right after you start flying, because if you press jump, if you hold jump before you start flying, then you'll start floating, and it drops your fall speed, so that you won't get a dive. So you need to wait until after you tap left. So basically here I tap left to start flying, but I want to grab A right before, or A or B right before I begin, right after I start flying, but right before I hit the Koopa, because holding jump when I touch him gives me a bigger bounce off of him. So that launches me up to the ceiling. So spin, fly, duck, and then left and A or B. And that's how you do that. But now as for why I want to reach that ceiling with the dive still stored, it's because the instant I cross from having negative speed back to having positive speed, I'm gonna use up that stored dive into a ceiling. And that's how you start a sticky fly. So if I can do it right here, the hard part is getting the A press in time. You can see this is like one of the main reasons why I wanted this ASM for this level, where the cape flashes to indicate you have a dive stored. It's because you can see I'm flashing the entire time I'm moving up off the Koopa, and there I'm not. So that's how you know that you messed up. It's basically feedback for how you did this trick wrong. If you don't get enough height off the Koopa, it's because you didn't press A or B in time. If you're not flashing, it's because you didn't have a dive stored when you hit him. So you basically want to do that series of inputs at just the right time to keep that dive stored all the way into the ceiling. And what Sticky Fly is it's basically a way to preserve a stored dive across a long distance, because I keep getting it back this whole time and using it over and over again to keep myself glued to the ceiling. So I still have that dive stored the entire time I'm on the ceiling. And then here, there's that Yoshi we grew up earlier. And we're gonna use him to turn around, basically, because normally you can turn around in Sticky Fly by doing a well-timed spin and re-grabbing the buttons. But without patch turnaround, it'll be random whether or not it'll work, because you won't be facing the right direction half the time. So we're gonna use Yoshi to help us out here. So we can ditch Yoshi, and keep in mind, Yoshi, when you land on him, cancels your X speed. So if I were to then ditch Yoshi with my dive still stored, it shoots me up into the air with 0 speed, so I don't use up the stored dive, and it puts me in the perfect position again to start sticky flying in the other direction. So I neutral the D-pad so Yoshi doesn't turn around as I land on him. Then I can just ditch him and start another sticky fly. Oops. If I can time it right. Like that. It's actually pretty forgiving with the timing. Yeah, and it's all because, like, he cancels your X speed, so I still am able to get a boost off of him, similar to how I get a boost off of Koopa, with still no X speed, so I can keep my dive and use it to start sticky flying. You could also do this if you're actively riding Yoshi by just building up a dive while Yoshi flying, and then very lightly tapping the D-pad in the other direction to turn around, so you keep the stored dive, and then you can just ditch Yoshi, and now you'll be moving backwards at full speed with the dive stored moving up. And this part's pretty simple. You just use his tongue to hit the switch by, well, his tongue doesn't hit the switch, but the Koopa on his tongue will hit that sprite on-off switch. So basically you just tongue the Koopa, so it hits the switch for you as his tongue goes back in. And that's pretty simple, just to change the on-off state. And now this is going into the final trick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remap my inputs here. Yo, what's up, Zorio? Because I need LNR, and my LNR are currently save and load state. So, the first part of this... Oops, I actually remapped them wrong. My bad. There we go. Yeah, so this first part here, uses the Sumo Bro lightning fire falling from the sky. And you can see there's an on-off switch that's solid ground, but the lightning will basically, if the lightning goes through that ground, it'll hit the on-off switch by interacting with it. So there's a vanilla glitch involving Sumo Brother Lightning and Screen Scroll, where they basically, when a Sumo Bro spawns its lightning, it sets a timer, and while that timer is active, the lightning can't interact with any objects whatsoever, like no ground tiles or anything, and it's only a 16-frame timer, and it does this so that the lightning doesn't collide with the ground that it spawns inside of, because the Sumo Brothers are always on ground when they stomp and drop the lightning. But one way that they fucked up is when they were making the Sumo Bros lightning, is they forgot to make the lightning check or if the screen is scrolling flag is set. So even if you're screen scrolling, the lightning will still fall. And because the game is technically paused during that time, their timer isn't ticking down. So the entire time they're falling, they're not able to interact with the ground. So if you screen scroll right as Sumo Brother Lightning spawns, then it will pass through any object that it encounters as it's falling down off the bottom of the screen. So normally, if I were to just try to sticky fly here, oops. Oh, come on. I swear I'm normally good at cape. If I try to sticky fly here, the fire's just gonna hit me. So I want it to pass through the ground, both so I can safely sticky fly through, and also so it can hit that on-off switch for me, because the screen scroll, no matter when you time it, as long as the lightning goes through the floor, because the screen scroll itself is a fixed number of frames, and so is the Sumo Brother Lightning timer, so it'll always run out, it'll always be able to interact with objects again at the exact right time for this to work. So as long as you screen scroll at the right time for the lightning to pass through the ground, it'll hit that on-off switch for you, basically. Your L button stopped working after KLDCX. It's very sad. So what I do here is I screen scroll to let both lightning bolts go through the floor. And then the second one hits that switch for me. So if I can time this right, and there you go, you see the cape is still flashing, I got the sticky fly, everything is good. And it's the exact same trick from the start of the level, but now instead of pause buffering a Y input to use up my stored dive without spinning, I'm now screen scroll pause buffering my Y input. So I grab Y, I can basically, after I screen scroll, I grab Y in the middle of it to use up, to start flying and get a stored dive and instantly use it up. But then I let go, so I can do the next screen scroll, because keep in mind, you need to be holding no buttons. You can't be holding anything other than L or R, or the screen scroll won't work in vanilla. So I do get that little boost of height that gives me horizontal trajectory to line me up, or horizontal distance to line me up for the sticky fly. And then I let myself drop a little bit further down so I can get a second one, basically. I'm getting two different air catches here. So both times I drop down a little bit and then start flying, I get a big air catch, I get a dive stored immediately and use it up right away, and I do that 2 times in a row by dropping a little bit each time. So I'm briefly re-grabbing Y, screen scroll, re-grab Y, screen scroll, re-grab Y, basically. Right into, oops, if I can time it right into this ceiling here. Like that. And you'll notice that my cape is still flashing at this point, because actually, let me see if I can't. You can also save this like that, but you need to be moving fast for the next part to work, so you do need to speed up if that happens. So if you miss those blocks like that, but the lightning went through, you can save yourself, which is deliberate. Let's see if I can't get this easily enough. There we go. And then that's the end of the level right there, is just go into this up pipe. Yes, it is, TJB. that's the whole level. But yeah, let me just quickly pause here so I can remap my save and load state to LNR, because I'm done with the screen scrolling now. I wouldn't normally ever save state this part, but I'm doing it just for the just to demo how it works. Let me just how do I even... I'm trying to figure out my buttons to save state as soon as I unpause. Oops, that's load state. How do I... Buttons are hard. There's start. There's L. Okay, I think I can do this. Okay, there. So, if you are moving fast enough, basically, then keep in mind, sticky flying is a way to keep your stored dive over across a large distance. So, when I've hit this one tile wide chute here, hitting that wall will then stop me immediately. It'll cancel my X speed. And if I'm moving fast enough, then it'll cancel my X speed before I can get much height from leaving the sticky fly ceiling. So it'll let me keep my stored dive, and it's the exact same thing before with how the air catches work, but the sticky fly actually makes it automatic for you. As long as you're moving fast enough, you will always have a stored dive coming out of that ceiling moving upwards. So it sets it up for you. The part that you need to worry about, though, is then getting up to the ceiling above you, because there's an interesting little quirk where if you're holding right while you're flying up, like moving up with a stored dive against a solid wall, you might not think you move forward at all when you press forward, but technically you do. You get positive speed for 1 frame, and then the game says, okay, you have positive speed, you're flying into a wall, it sets your speed back to 0, and pushes you out of the wall. So when you tap forward, the game sees that you have positive speed, even if it's just for 1 frame. So if you were to just hold forward, it would give you an air catch straight up into the whatever space is above you. But because you're holding forward the whole time, the game doesn't actually let you keep it, for reasons that probably have something to do with like subpixels or frames or some other bullshit. But if you do a very light tap on the D-pad, it'll use the stored dive to give you air, but it'll let you keep the stored dive as long as you let go of forward very quickly after you tap it. So it needs to be a very, very quick tap, if I can get it here. And you can see I'm still flashing. I was still flashing there after I tapped forward. Okay, I wasn't moving fast enough there. If I just hold forward, I don't get it. I'm not flashing anymore once I hold forward. But if I just do a little tap forward, oops, while I'm moving up. Nope, that wasn't quick enough. You can see I'm still flashing afterwards. So you can chain that together forever. As like while you're moving up, you do like a couple frame tap forward on the D-pad to launch yourself up and let you keep your stored dive. So you can just keep doing that forever. And here I'm nice, I only require you to do it once or twice depending on how long you tap the D-pad for. The longer you tap it for, the more height you'll get out of it. So like that was like a mid-sized amount of height. I barely tap it at all, that's very little height. So what I want to do for this part is I just want to tap it enough times that I can keep my stored dive up until I hit the ceiling. And the on-off there is basically, it's only there to make this line up a little easier for you. You can also try to save yourself if you're falling. Let me see if I can try that here. Like that would have worked. That would have saved me if I had just done the sticky fly inputs. But yeah, the on-off is only there to keep you at 0 speed, because like you still need a wall in front of you up until you're at the very top. It's just to make it easier for you so you don't accidentally hold forward. Like if you do a tap forward, there won't be a wall to stop you, but this way there is a wall so you can go up into the ceiling and start sticky flying once you get your dive back, as long as the tap is quick enough. So basically, You just want to use that perpetual air catch to keep your stored dive up until you hit the ceiling, and then reactivate it for one last sticky fly into the pipe. Like that. Just a quick forward back is all it takes to start sticky flying. And you just hold up, and that's the end of the level. And if I can actually, I want to load up quickly just to demo how ridiculous this is. Where is learning to fly? Because this is a great place where you can practice it, is in learning to fly, wherever I have it in my folder. There it is. Thank God SMW doesn't let you get one speed there. Oh, you mean like a one speed into, like, the whole ceiling into the pipe? That'd be really funny. Just like the anticipation, you don't want to speed up. Then you just like hold up and left, hold up and left. Yeah, if you do 2-player game and learning to fly, and then you save file, and then just like start select out, you're now Luigi on this secret level. And this is where you can practice perpetual air catches. Let me see how many tries this takes me. Okay, not the first try. So each time I go up, it's while you're moving upwards, you have to do a very small tap on the D-pad forward. I don't know the exact frame window. It feels like, oops, I was holding. Maybe like 3 to 5 frames is ideal, but it's hard to say. I haven't actually timed it out myself. Okay, that was like 4 times in a row there. There's a bit of subpixel dependency. Gotcha. Yeah, so the amount of height that you're gonna get is variable, but it should always be doable no matter what. There we go. Nice and easy. And that's just chaining it 4 times in a row with 4 big ones. And here you'll notice that I have to like set it up manually myself in a number of ways. For example, I can either pull up when I'm a certain distance away from the wall. That time I didn't get it because I pulled up too far from the wall. Or you can set it up yourself with some fancy little B presses and stuff. So like here I get a full dive stored, and then I do that basically to set it up myself while I'm pressed up against the wall. The Goomba kills you if he touches that bottom tile, isn't that cool? Let me see if I can't do it again. Oops. There we go. But yeah, if you don't get a dive stored at all, so in this case Mario wouldn't be flashing at all, it means he pulled up too far from the wall. And if you get barely any height, then you pulled up too close to the wall, like that. And the nice thing about the sticky fly is it sets it up automatically as long as you're moving fast enough. So that first part is taken care of for you. And then you just have to focus on doing these single taps until you hit the ceiling. And once you hit the ceiling, if you still have your dive stored, then you start sticky flying. And it's hard, but I love it. Yeah, that's basically the level is finished. Nothing else is finished. I still need to do the overworld and title screen and credits and everything. But yeah, that's... And I'll just play through it quickly, I guess, with save states. Oh, nope, I didn't get a dive there. Yeah, I'm really proud of how this one came out. It's very particular and has like a really high like knowledge requirement. And skill requirement, obviously, especially to string it all together in one attempt. There's a lot of stuff you can do that'll mess you up without even realizing it. Unless you know what's going on, you have to really, like, know what you're doing to understand why you die sometimes. And it's, like, very inspired by Hacker's Dreams in that regard, especially with, like, the difficulty and section length. Oops. There we go. I've beaten this twice so far, and I'll beat it a third time to make like a proper clear video once it's actually finished. It's not too bad, at least for me. It's a lot of fun. I'm really happy with how it came out. I made this as like a challenge to myself first, honestly. Just like getting some like post 1F9 feelings out of my system, I guess. I just wanted to make something that felt like a Hacker's Dreams level if Anon was absolutely fucking cracked with vanilla cape tech. Let me change my hotkeys real quick. It would take a lot of practice to get good at it. I don't know, mod cape is pretty hard, it's just for very different reasons. It'd take like a lot of practice to get good with it, and a lot of trial and error, but like if someone's like really determined, I think someone else could definitely beat this. I like how it flows, you know, like I put a lot of like time and effort into making all the tricks flowed well. There's like a couple of hand-intensive parts here and there, but they're spaced out with like more chill sections, like this long sticky fly that's kind of leading up to the final bit. And there's like, granted, nothing in this seems easy. It's honestly harder than it looks, but the way it's planned out, there's definitely breaks. It's not non-stop high input density bullshit. I mean, I deliberately made the beginning of it something kind of chill and mindless to give your hands a break between attempts. That's also why I don't just kill you at the start of the level. You can just wait there forever if you want. It's very deliberate with the spacing. There's a couple places where you can chill, a couple places where you can make a save state if you want to practice it. Like, I really wanted, like, the player to be able to save state practice, because, I mean, I had access to that, they should too, and it'll definitely be needed for a section this long to kind of learn what's coming up later, unless you're, like, a third wall kind of sicko. Yeah, Mod Cape is, like, a really good challenge in your, like, it's, like, the highest challenge that's, like, publicly available for, like, controlling your movement and knowing how speed, like, stuff works. And this I wanted to be a similar challenge, but more focused on just, like, vanilla tech knowledge and execution, while still being, like, a fast-paced, like, very fluid Kaizo level. And I'm really proud of how it came out in that regard. It's a lot of fun for me. I just hope it's fun for other people who play it. Yeah, let's do this ending part now. In one go. There we go. Nice and easy. It's not bad at all. End the file bin era. No, I am going to submit this to SMW Central. I'm making Katoon play this. I don't care. Yeah, once it's polished, once people test it and give feedback, it'll probably change a little after testing. Probably not too much, though, I don't think. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm waiting on some music ports and stuff like that, but yeah. Also, the music changes every couple minutes, if I speed it up a bit. Gonna change now? Nope. Okay, it looped just there, so maybe now. Nope, let's do one more loop. Okay, I think it should change now. Yep. And now it's this fucking wacky-ass nonsense. I'll see how people feel about all the different songs. There's like 7 of them, or something like that, all from fucking Octo Expansion. I'll probably cut a couple. This for like 3 or 4 minutes probably isn't the best thing for people to listen to. We'll see. There's some, like, bangers in here, though. After this one, it's Regret, and I fucking love Regret. Like, this one's great to just, like, zone out with for this level. Oops. Yeah. That's it. I'm just happy with how this came out. And hopefully I'll be able to release it in, like, a month. Once, like, I mean, the main thing I'm gonna be waiting on is, like, music porting, assuming I do get something ported. If I don't, then probably just a couple weeks, however long it takes me to get testing feedback, do an overworld and credits and a title screen pretty much, and that's it. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out.